Hello, hello, it is Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the Sonic Scoop podcast. And today, we are going back into our mix breakdown series. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, but whenever I have a track that comes up a lot with my mastering clients and my mix coaching clients as a reference for them, as a sonic reference for either masters or mixes, it gets me curious. What do people like so much about this track? What's happening in the mix that is resonating with other music producers? What can we learn from it? I've got the Pro Tools screen open today because I've got a mix for you from an artist who I didn't think I was going to be listening to, Sabrina Carpenter. Now, I am not like the target demographic to be a Sabrina Carpenter fan, but I have to admit it's, very well executed. So what is happening in this track that we can learn from? The track we're looking at here is Taste, and it's got 1.5 billion streams on Spotify. It's not her most popular track. If you look a little further down here, off of this album, there's a track with 3 billion streams called Espresso, which I had not heard until today because no one's brought it up for me as a sonic reference. So why are music producer-y types picking out this particular track, Taste, as being something that stands out to them and can be a bit of a sonic touchstone? And even if you don't, like me, find yourself as being the target market for like a girl pop, what can we learn from a fabulous mix from Serban, Ghenea? All right, there's a lot of lessons in this one, but I'm going to kind of give you a spoiler right up front, which is that one of the most important lessons we can learn from this track is that a lot of the great stuff happening here in the mix isn't just because of the mix. It's actually because of the arrangement. And good mixing starts with good arrangement. So we'll be looking into that in some detail. All right, if you want like a whole system that's going to teach you how to mix even better, check out our great full-length courses like Mixing Breakthroughs, Mastering Demystified, Compression Breakthroughs, EQ Breakthroughs, all that good stuff. Guaranteed to change the way that you work forever for the better of your money back. If you're into this type of content, do hit like and subscribe. It does help spread the word. All right, without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm going to start playing this track from the top and tell me what you hear. But one of the big things that I'm going to listen for, I'm going to stop this track a whole bunch, are what are called scene changes. Unlike a completely live podcast episode like this track is not going to yammer on for 2 minutes. It's going to be over in 2 minutes. 2.5 minutes to be exact. And something new is going to happen about every 7 or 8 seconds in this track. Let's have a listen and tell me what stands out to you. Here we go.
Oh, I leave quite an impression. 5 feet to be exact. You're wondering why I have his clothes when missing my body's where they're at. Now I'm gone, but you're still laying next to me. 1 degree of separation.
All right, we're 25 seconds in, and already more has happened in this song from a production perspective than has possibly happened in some of your more recent productions or mixes. But they're subtle enough that you might miss them if you weren't paying attention for them. And they're significant enough that they help give forward momentum to the mix. Now, some of these are mixing choices, and some of them are arrangement choices. But let it be known that this song, the BPM it's at, every bar is probably about 2 seconds long. So we're going to hear substantial changes every 4 bars, so about every 8 seconds. And what's the first major change? It's going to be something having to do with vocal effects. I want you to listen to very carefully. Here we go.
Oh, I leave quite an impression. 5 feet to be exact. You're wondering why I have his clothes when missing my body's where they're at. Now.
So right there in the first 16 seconds, the very first bar phrase, we hear less effect than we hear on the second bar. Right at the 8-second mark, at the end of bar 2, something new has been introduced into the track. And what is it? It's a delay throw. Now, there's something you can learn from the mixing of the vocals on this track in general. They use better reverb treatments than you're possibly using. One of the big things here is that in a lot of these pop records where you really hear the reverb, what you're often hearing is delayed reverb. whether that is a reverb with significant pre-delay, meaning more than like 50 milliseconds, so the reverb starts to separate from the original vocal sound, or whether it's literally a delay that may then have additional repeats, making it sound like a reverb, or literally a delay going into a reverb. And that's what happens if you listen to second number 4, the end of the first phrase doesn't have as much effect on it as the end of the second phrase. Something has already developed by second 8 that wasn't there at second 1. Listen to that one more time. Listen to the end of the first phrase, and then listen to the end of the second phrase and hear how there's more effect on it.
Oh, I leave quite an impression. 5 feet to be exact.
You hear that the word exact has a repeat on it. There's less delay on the first phrase. You hear like a little bit of a delay on kind of one of the words, but it's a very short, non-repeating delay. And you hear that there's probably a reverb with some pre-delay, but it's allowed to blossom more at second 8. So this is something that happens constantly in pop mixing. You might think, Justin, you have been spending, how long are we into this episode? We're 6 minutes in and you're talking about the first 8 seconds of the song? Like, yeah, that is the kind of thought that goes into these Swiss watch music productions. And it's the kind of thing I want you to start thinking about. There are other records that have come up as popular references for clients recently that are a little bit more like alternative or like, cool adult contemporary. Casey Musgraves is one that's come up a bunch recently as references. Again, for clients that aren't even in that style. They just like the sound of the record. But the difference between a Sabrina Carpenter record and a Casey Musgraves record is that Casey Musgraves is doing the exact same stuff, or her producers are doing the exact same stuff, but they, instead of doing it every 8 seconds, they're doing it every 16 seconds. But these are the kinds of things you need to start thinking about programming into your track. All right. And then by the time that we get to like second 14 and then second 21, the whole arrangement has changed. So let's have one more listen and see what gets introduced and at what time marker.
Oh, I leave quite an impression.
Fairly dry.
5 feet to be exact.
Long delay throw.
You're wondering why half is closed when missing my body's where they're at.
Long
Now I'm
delay throw.
gone, but you're still laying.
So again, right here, when we get to second 16, we are all of a sudden introducing something new. What is it?
Now I'm gone, but you're still laying next to me. 1 degree of separation. I heard you.
And from second 16 to second 24, we have so many things introduced that you, if you're like a new music producer, you would like make a whole entire song out of one of these elements that's been added briefly for one bar and then goes away and maybe never even comes back again in the whole song. So you can kind of poo-poo pop music production for being lame or boring or the songs are so simple, but where these people are putting their brain power, some of it, is into like little arrangement decisions like this. They know that they can't get away with writing a fugue like Bach for like a modern audience. I like to listen to a Bach fugue. I even am pretentious enough to say Bach instead of Bach. But they know that's not going to necessarily play on the radio. So how can they get this little bit of complexity in there, little bits of development? They do it by taking a song with a relatively set structure. Honestly, though, it probably has more sections in it than many of the songs that you're writing. And then they add to that like little bits of tonal shifts, like little bits of flourishes, the kinds of things that where Bach would take a melodic line and then reinterpret that melodic line. We've taken song structure and we've just added like a little flourish to it that most people are never going to even notice. And most music nerds aren't going to even notice. So what are these flourishes? Right here around second 16, we're introducing this repeating vocal sample effect. It's like a synthy vocal repeat and then a bass blossom.
Now I'm gone, but you're still laying next to me. 1 degree of separation. I heard you.
Track drops. But there's one more major production decision they made right here in the first 24 seconds. right here, second 23, second 24, right at the end of, maybe I should speak more musically, right at the end of bar 8, all of the vocal effects dry up for just a moment before the chorus drops. Let's listen to these 8 seconds again, because again, more has happened in these 8 seconds from second 16 to 24 than happens in a lot of novice music productions. Listen to it one more time. We have the same guitar and vocal. We've got the vocal effect that comes in and then disappears. We have the bass being added, and then we have all of the vocal effects drop out to just a moment of dryness at the end of the phrase right before the chorus, or it's actually a pre-chorus, finally hits. Let's hear that.
Now I'm gone, but you're still laying next to me. 1 degree of separation. I heard you're back together, and if that's true, you'll just have to taste me when he's kissing you. If you want forever, I bet you do. Just know you'll taste me too.
This is a post-chorus, 2 bars. So interesting song arrangement. I think we have got like 8 bars of verse intro. We've got like 4 bars of pre-chorus, then 8 bars of chorus, and then 2 bars of post-chorus. That's not something that you'll find in every song. Pre-chorus, chorus, and post-chorus. Now, this particular first chorus, they're actually holding back a little bit on the development. They're hitting you right up front at second 24 with the point of the song. Now you've gotten to the point of the song. They've established the hook relatively early on. They take it away, and we're going to come back to it soon. And this is how you can make something very engaging for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And the song will feel like it ends too soon because so much happens in that 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And then what does that make people want to do? It makes them want to play it again. Now, you might not be in a genre like Sabrina Carpenter where you're making like super pop, but there's actually a lot of like hard rock and metal records that are produced and engineered this way and written this way. There's hip hop records that are written this way. But even if you're not doing it to this degree, where something changes every 8 seconds, every 4 bars, there's a scene shift every 4 bars. Even if you're not doing that, you want to make sure that stuff happens every 8 bars at the very least. And if you're going to try to get away with it happening every 8 bars, your musicianship should be really good. Because if you listen to, I'm thinking of doing this on an upcoming episode, like a Casey Musgraves track that's more alt country, more like adult and sophisticated pop music. It's all the same stuff, but the tempos are slower and it happens every 8 bars instead of 4. But the reason you can chill out for 8 bars is because there's a really good human acoustic guitar performance. And if you wanted people to have people listen to you strum an acoustic guitar for 8 bars, it better be a cool sound. There better be other cool sounds around it, and the person better be able to really play. If you can't like really play, then these pop tricks help. All right, let's go out of the chorus and into our next verse and just hear how the next verse is different from the first verse. And then we'll hear what develops on the next chorus. While we're listening to this, I'll play it from the end of the chorus. I also want you to listen to this record through the lens of tier theory. I've harped on it many times, but every single track in a great mix has 1 or 2 things that are the most prominent. That's your A tier. 1 or 2 things that are the second most prominent. That's your B tier. And then your C tier is everything else. I think one of the reasons that so many people look to this track is because the kick and snare are so hot in this track, and it gets away with it. So many of us as mixers want to impress people with our kick and snare sounds. And what really is leading this for me is A tier is like the vocal, and then kind of like right below it is almost like kick and snare together. Which one of them wins? It depends a little bit on your sound system. Is the backbeat a little bit more emphasized for you, or is the downbeat a little bit more emphasized for you? One of the brilliant things about this, the mixing in this track, is the kick and snare almost have equal weight. But I want you to recognize one other thing. The way that the vocal, the kick, and the snare can all seem so forward is that the bass is allowed to take a little bit of a backseat. And this leads to another reason that I think a lot of producery people like this track. A lot of producery people are rock music people. Even if they're not working in rock, a lot of them grew up on rock. They're like guitar-y people and bassy people and piano-y people. And in rock records, it's often like, yeah, guitars and drums are like some of the most important things. Pop records are often mixed differently than that. Pop records, some of the A-tier stuff you find in pop is often vocal, snare, and then up there in the A-tier right below it would be bass. But this is mixed a little bit more rock because the bass is allowed to take a little bit of a backseat to the kick, and the bass is able to win over the kick. So that's something I want you to listen for. When push comes to shove, in this particular track, the kick is allowed to win over the bass, and that gives it more of a rock feel. In the beginning of this track, what are our main elements? Guitar and vocals, and that gives this track a little bit more of a rock feel. So it's totally different than Sabrina Carpenter's most popular track off this album that has 3-something billion streams on it, which has never been referenced to me by any producers or engineers. That one is decidedly not a rock track. It is a totally different set of priorities. But because this track is mixed a little bit more like a rock track, it seems to speak to the, I'm sorry, like, I've seen the demographics of the channel, and all y'all are pasty and male. So when a pop track is mixed a little bit like a rock track, it speaks to you a little bit more. These are some insights into psychology of what makes certain tracks stand out to certain people. All right, let's hear it from the end of this chorus. Keep those things in mind. The relationship of kick and snare and vocals winning over things like bass. And then let's hear what happens in the next verse.
I bet you do, just know you'll taste me too.
Vocal is huge. Guitar is like B tier, right? Vocal is A tier.
On the carpet, makes paintings with his tongue. He's funny now, all his jokes hit different. Guess who we learned that from? Now I'm gone.
Right? Like our main elements here in the mix are kick, snare, vocal, and then right behind it are like guitar effects and flourishes in the verse. And there's so many little throws and things happening in this verse. Part of what makes the mix sound great are these little ear candy arrangement decisions. Let's just analyze this verse one more time and tell me what you notice every 4 bars.
He pins you down on the carpet, makes paintings with his tongue.
Do you see how they left room in the arrangement between vocal phrases to fill it with ear candy? And then they made sure it was filled. And this is one of the things that I find in more of like the amateur music productions and mixes that I work in, is that there'll be empty space in the record. And here there isn't empty space. There's always a point. There's always something to be listening to. Check out this section right here. As the end of this vocal phrase happens, we have 2 different ear candy elements that are introduced. Listen one more time.
You down on the carpet, makes paintings with his tongue.
Right? We have this descending synth line right into the la 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 las. Listen to that one more time.
With his tongue.
They pick up where the vocal left off. They don't even give you a second to get bored. Now, with all this said, for your own sanity, it's good to get bored. It's good to get bored more often, and it's good to like get into long form stuff. But when you want to capture someone's attention and when you want to create a brilliantly crafted nugget for someone to come back to again and again and again, that's usually going to take you putting tremendous number of hours into something very short. The opposite of what I'm doing this podcast episode, right? I'm doing a kind of off the dome analysis of this track that I hope you listen to once with me. You go deep, you fight through the boredom of focusing on the same thing for like a half an hour so that you take something away from it. Because I'm not making a piece of art video that is meant for millions of people to see, right? We're doing like a deep dive of study together. So what's the max number of people that's going to watch this video? When I do one of these mix breakdown videos, I expect my target audience to be 2,000 to 10,000 people in the first week. Like at the most. Some of my most popular ones might have tens of thousands of views when I do a particularly good job on a particularly interesting track. But it really is a niche thing. If I wanted to make videos that weren't niche, instead of spending an hour on making an hour video, I would spend 70 hours on making a 7-minute video. And that's what record production is like. It's a different thing than live music performance for other musicians. So also, this is a great thing to think about, is like recognize what lane you're in, who you're making music for and why. Who is your target audience? Because all the advice I'm giving right now in this production would be totally meaningless if your goal is to be a guitar shredder who plays for other guitar shredders, and the way that you make money is that other guitar shredders come to see you shred better than them and then pay you money for your instructionals on how to shred more shreddy. Right? And that's a lane people can occupy. Your lane can also be brilliant songwriting, in which case you should learn something. Even if a song like this is relatively simple, you can learn something from its song structure. Because you might just be thinking about verse and chorus. Have you thought about pre-chorus and post-chorus and how that might change your songs? Have you thought about how early to put the chorus in your song? Maybe you don't need 16 bars before your chorus hits. Maybe 8 bars or even 4 bars before your chorus hits for a certain type of song could be appropriate. All right, let's listen now to the back half of this verse. What's different now? Here we go.
He's funny now, all his jokes hit different. Guess who we learned that from? Now I'm gone, but you're...
So again, we have a new sound at the end of the vocal phrase that's taking off over where the vocal phrase left off. So now instead of like a little synth following the vocal phrase, we have electric guitar following the last vocal phrase. And we also have a new texture. For the first time in this verse, we have this clear left-right vocal double right at the end of the verse. Now, so many of us, when we're producing our first tracks, would be like, all right, this verse is going to have vocal doubles, so I'll have vocal doubles throughout the entire verse. Or we might get a little more hip and be like, ooh, vocal doubles are more powerful, so I'm going to put them at the end of every phrase. But if you listen to Sabrina Carpenter with her 1.5 billion streams, what are the producers doing here? They're doing, no, we're saving the vocal double until the very last phrase of verse 2. And we're not going to hit you over the head with it again. It is amazing the number of things that are introduced in this track that never come back. They just throw out one idea. It can be a new texture, a new instrument, a new way of affecting the vocals that'll literally just be a signature for only that one verse or only that one chorus. And that's the kind of thing I want you to listen for when you listen to this track by yourself. So with all that in mind, let's listen to verse 2 one more time. Tell me what you noticed.
He pins you down on the carpet, makes paintings with his tongue. He's funny now, all his jokes hit different. Guess who we learned that from? Now I'm gone, but you're still laying
Toms
next to me. 1 degree of separation.
And this is another thing in the mix that Serban is doing very well, is the toms in this section are a new, important, interesting element that has been added. But Serban is not hammering you over the head with, check it out, there's interesting toms now in this section. It's like, no. We're going to hear them, we know. And one of the things I often hear in beginner and intermediate mixes is like, there's toms in this section, let's make them the loudest thing in the whole mix and have it walk over the entire song. We need to make sure people really hear these toms. We need them to sound great and thunderous. But you don't need to do that. Like if this is the first time, and maybe like one of the only times that this tom pattern is happening in the song, our ear is going to notice it without you putting a gigantic spotlight on it. And this is something to recognize, that just because a new and interesting element comes into the song doesn't mean it's the point of the song right there that needs to get moved up into A tier. So a lot of newer mixers will always have their tom fills be an A tier because they're like, it's new. I need to impress you. No, they're impressive already. You don't need to go an extra mile to impress me. So listen to how those toms are treated now when we get into this pre-chorus.
Now I'm gone, but you're still laying next to me. 1 degree of separation. I heard you're back together.
You could almost miss those toms. They're interesting, they're cool. Maybe they could be brought up louder in the mix. But Serban's most important job here, he knows, is that in this style of production, the toms are not supposed to be A tier. The vocalist.
Next to me, 1 degree of separation. I heard you're back together. And
so that's a big thing in mixing, is priority. And it's interesting, even the guitars are almost allowed to win over those toms a little bit. And it's one of the things I want you to think about when you think about production is when push comes to shove, what are the most important elements in this song and in this section? And always, always be looking to prioritize those things. So, key takeaways from me, and then I'll hear key takeaways from you if you're here for the live stream premiere, are number 1, have scene changes constantly. This is a 2.5-minute song where every 8 seconds, something new is introduced almost without fail. The only time that doesn't really happen is in the first chorus, where we're allowed to go almost 16 seconds without anything substantial changing or something new being introduced. Just in that first chorus, it's like not until maybe like bar 12 to 16 of that chorus that we're starting to add new elements in, because we're at the point of the song, we're at the groovy part of the song, we're at the hook, and the melody is doing enough. But everywhere else, it's like every 8 seconds, every 4 bars, there's something. There's a little piece of candy for you. The other big things here are there's great use of effects in here. And one of the ways we can hear effects more is through contrast. So our very first phrase has less effect than our second phrase. And it makes us notice the effects on the second phrase a little bit more. If the end of the first phrase had this delayed reverb throw, and also the second phrase had it, and also the third phrase, we start to get accustomed to it and we kind of tune it out. But the fact that it kind of subtly appears in the second phrase is something that really makes it work. Also, we don't have this long repeating delay on literally every single word in the verse. No. It just appears at the ends of phrases when we'd actually be able to appreciate that long repeating delay or delayed reverb. It's not just repeating randomly on every single word in the entire thing. If you listen to like the middle of the first phrase in the first verse, we hear a little bit of short phasey delay that almost has this kind of like modulation effect in it. We hear less of that in the second phrase, but we hear a delay throw at the end of it. So the fact that these are allowed to evolve over time is what makes the effect so interesting. So if you're really trying to do great pop effects, it's not just a set it and forget it, here's my delay sound for the whole song. It's like, how are my delays going to change over time? How are my vocal effects going to change over time? How are they going to accent and support what's happening in the narrative arc of the song and the melodic arc of the vocal? And then there's these ideas of, if you have a great idea, you could have a great idea that you're willing to murder and throw away, because there's so many ideas in this song. If you were to like write down the song, and I encourage you to do it, it's only 2.5 minutes long, to properly analyze it, you're probably going to sit down for like an hour and a half listening to this 2.5 minute song again and again. But if you were to write down what happens every 4 bars, make a note of it, you'll start to notice that, oh my goodness, there's some things in this song that introduce like a really cool sound and a really cool melodic motif that only ever happen once and then are thrown away. Or only happen in 1 bar in 2 of the verses. And that is the kind of stuff that goes in to making a relatively simple, straightforward pop song that's 2.5 minutes long be heard 1.5 billion times. Now, I'm not the target market. And when I'm listening to this stuff in a mastering context, I'm not listening to all these tiny little things. But some of the things I do pick up on when I'm mastering tracks for clients, and they provide this as a sonic reference, is the overall tonal balance, which Serban, Ghenea, I have to speak to this. It's bright and tight, but still big enough on bottom, but he's not loading it with like a ton of extra subby stuff. And he has this way of presenting the mid-range where he carves out stuff in the center mids, like 6, 7, 800 hertz. That stuff is very smoothed out, which makes it a little bit more pop. Whereas in a rock record, some of that grittier center mid-range stuff might be a little bit more forward. So I hope some of that stuff is useful. Some people in here are telling me that the music level was way louder than my voice for this one. And I actually am seeing that here on my meters. I probably should have brought down the music level a little bit more for this one. So apologies on that. Max Wood says, thanks for doing this breakdown. Your videos are always very helpful. Awesome. BLB says, I often have a problem with sibilance in Sabrina Carpenter songs. It is not too loud, but the S sound just sounds so unnatural to me. I know it's a choice, but I cannot stand it. It is true. You'd be surprised on some records how they do let S's and stuff poke out. That can be something that you'll hear in pop. Giuseppe says it sounds so good. Maddie says, reminds me of Cool by Gwen Stefani. So bright and polished. I do have some complaints here today that the music was too loud in this one. So, you know what? This is a live stream. I could have been more careful in setting levels on this one. So my apologies on that. Maybe for the actual podcast version, I'll go back and tweak levels before uploading it. But thanks for hanging out with me for this one. Let me know in the comments down below if you've noticed any of the same stuff, if there's stuff that you're noticing that I've left out. Callum says, really interesting hearing about stuff only appearing once. As a composer, I'm constantly trying to get the most out of as little material as possible. Someone else here is mentioning, this is why these records will have like 10 writers on them. Because there's so many ideas in these. Like there's an amazing number of writers on some of these pop hits. And one of the things that you can start to take from that, even though you're not like a million people and you're just one person possibly writing stuff or producing stuff, one of the things that you can take away is, can I throw out too many ideas and then plan to throw a bunch of them away? Because one of the big problems we sometimes get into with both writing and with producing is we become so attached to our darlings. We came up with an idea. We think we finally found a good one, and we just need to repeat it again and again because we love it. And there's not a chance of us ever killing it. But if the next time you write a song, you just plan on, I'm going to write at least 3 or 4 times more little ideas than I need, and I'm going to throw away 50% to 75% of them, man, that where true creativity really comes out of exploring a ton of ideas and then trimming away the fat. But in order to have fat to trim away, you first need to fatten things up. So it's something I want to encourage you to do. Like gorge on the creative process where you throw out not just good ideas. And this is one of the problems that we get into with creativity is we want to only have good ideas and we murder bad ideas before they emerge. No, I want you to throw out a lot of bad ideas. Try a lot of ideas that seem bad. Like sometimes you just need a greater quantity of ideas. And some of the ideas that you thought might be bad, actually, if you tweak them a little bit, are kind of cool. And only by allowing yourself to do a ton of ideas, including bad ones, will you finally stumble across good ones. So overwrite, overcreate, don't be afraid to put out bad ideas, and then trim back based on what you've created. And that's how arrangements like this are possible. And it's why there's like 10 writers on some of these tracks, because they just want a ton of ideas that they can pull from and then murder and discard from. All right. Well, I hope this one has been useful for you. If you really want to go deep into mixing itself, and not just the arrangement part, which is where good mixes come from, check out the full-length course, Mixing Breakthroughs. It's a whole system for mixing. It will change the way that you think about mixing. It will change the way that you mix forever for the better. Guaranteed to earn your money back. You can check out compression breakthroughs, EQ breakthroughs, if you really want to change the way that you hear and use compression and EQ forever for the better. Also, big shout out and thanks to Soundtoys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. Try out anything they make for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of Soundtoys effects like Echo Boy or Alter Boy were used on this one. I mean, they're just in so many major sessions across every genre. They make absolutely wonderful stuff. Thanks again for hanging out with me. This has been Justin Colletti of Sonic Scoop. If you've got more ideas for songs that you want to hear breakdowns on, please let me know in the comments down below. Always fun to hang out with you. See you next time.